the genuine BMW carbon fiber strut brace. A piece reserved exclusively for the M cars. But in today's video, we're adding this exclusive piece on the M235i in a major retrofit. Let's get into it.
What's up everybody, my name is Fritz and welcome to the channel. I hope all of you are well and enjoying yourselves during this holiday season. And as a final present to the year 2021, we have our retrofit of the BMW carbon fiber strut brace. And even if you have a 3 or a 4 series, follow along with the installation tips that we're gonna do in this retrofit on the M235i, because all the steps are also applicable to you, with the only exception is those top bars in the corner here. The 2 series is a little bit slimmer than the 3s and the 4s, and therefore it's a little bit more cumbersome to get the bars in, but also if we have to service that area, it's much more difficult to get them out. So if you have a 3 or 4 series, feel free to put those bars in when you do this retrofit. But to tell you the truth, all the suspension modifications that we've done in this year so far have culminated to this particular point. Starting from the ground up, we did the thicker sway bars from Turner Motorsports, which is the best suspension modification you can do for your car without sacrificing any ride quality at all. And in that process, we had to upgrade to adjustable end links, which in theory should have worked out perfectly for our kit. And although it took a little bit of time, we eventually got the appropriate end links to pair with the KWDDC kit. And moving on upwards, we had to also keep in mind of the top hats, or in this case, camber plates. Because in order to retrofit this strut bar, we needed something very specific. Something that would fit the diameter of a non-M strut, but also give us the attachment points on the top for the aluminum brace. And that's exactly why we went with the Vorschlag camber plates, to give us the attachment points for that strut brace, but also to secure the strut in its mounting point and it doesn't wiggle around as it would with an OEM top hat. So for all intents and purposes, we're gonna skip that step because we already did it with the coilover install, but with those in, all that we really need for the rest of this retrofit, bare bones, is just going to be the aluminum brace on the top, the carbon fiber strut brace in the middle, as well as the landing plate here in the front, as well as the plates that are gonna go on the shock towers. That's all that you really need. But we wanna make this look as OEM as possible, which is exactly why we're gonna do the gaskets as well as the cowl paneling as well. So with that said, let's get this carbon fiber strut brace installed on your BMW.
Start by removing the lateral cowl panels, which are held in by 3 10mm locks that need a 90-degree turn. Then remove this electrical cover by unscrewing the T20 screw, which will reveal a push rivet. Unsecure it and the other ones holding in the strut tower cover, as well as the rivets securing in the side trim. You'll also want to handle these rivets with care, as we'll reuse them later on. With the trim piece out, clean the area and take note of this bolt and this hole. We'll want to cut a 1/2 inch from each towards their center. The space we're about to cut should be about 3 3/4 inches. Then place one last piece of tape at the fender side, below the 2 bulges. And before you start cutting, put your safety glasses on and cover up the area. Now carefully cut along your tape. If you happen to have the same tool as me, I never went above the 3rd speed setting, and the cutting discs supplied with the tool worked perfectly. In fact, I only used 1 disc to cut both sides. I would also recommend using 2 hands to better secure the tool, and because it's more stable, you could go a little bit faster than I did. I only went slow with 1 hand just so that you could see this process play out. And there it is. With this piece cut out, sand the area with some 180 grit sandpaper before using some finer sandpaper like 320 to even it out. Next, take some touch-up paint and cover up the bare metal. As the paint dries, we can pop off this plug to reveal the hole our Rivnut will go into. Test it to ensure it fits before putting it fully on the tool. Then ensure the Rivnut is all the way in before pressing it in. You might have some clearance issues with the hood depending on your tool's design, in which case, just do a dry run to see what position works best. Once the Rivnut is in, test it out and ensure it's secure and your bolt can fully thread in. Time to repeat this on the opposite side. The measurements are also the same, at a ½ inch from the bolt and hole, with the total length to be cut at 3 3/4 inches. Don't forget the tape at the bottom, and place some tape on the battery terminal as well, in addition to our coverings. I should also mention that this is my first time cutting into the car like this, so for those of you in the same boat, just take your time and always remember, measure twice and cut once. You can do this. I actually measured too many times to count, so I'm confident with this guide you'll do much better than I did. I also found it was best to do the Rivnut before using the touch-up paint to cover up the bare metal, which works better in application by using the supplied brushes as opposed to applying it by hand. As this paint dries, we can remove the strut tower bar, which is secured by 4 E18s, 2 at the strut towers and 2 behind the coverings at the cowl panel. With that out, we can install our strut tower reinforcement plates. In order to do so, we need to remove our 13mm bolts holding in the camber plates. Now, bolt selection here is very important. Typically the M cars use this one with a thin collar, but if the dimples in the reinforcement plate aren't cut properly, this won't fit. So for us non-M cars, I would suggest reusing our thick washer OEM bolts. And for those of you running insane camber, you'll want to use the bolts supplied with your Vorschlag camber plates towards the edges. That way you have enough clearance for the plate running that much camber, but also the bolt secures the camber plate into place. This will ensure maximum thread engagement for your setup. Once you have the appropriate bolts in, torque them to 28 Nm in a star pattern and repeat on the opposite side. Before placing in the aluminum bar, place a covering on the battery terminal until you're sure that it has enough clearance. When placing in the bar, insert the middle section first, then tilt down the driver's side before bringing down the passenger side. Now snug down the bolts and ensure you have adequate clearance on both sides. On the passenger side, you just want to ensure that the battery terminal clears the bar, and on the driver's side, you might need to slightly push down the metal brake line. Nothing too crazy, but just enough to clear the bar as you see here. Once everything is properly situated, tighten the center E18s to 56 Nm and all other bolts get 28 Nm. Moving down to the landing plate, or front crosslink, which is held in by 4 top T40 bolts. Then we have to undo the T30 securing in the headlight clip in order to remove it, as well as the 4 T30s at the front of the crosslink. but the two center bolts holding in the top of the V-brace are T45s. And if you have a wobble, it makes getting to those bolts much easier. After removing the weather stripping, we can remove the last set of T30 bolts holding in the hood latches. The reason why you want to do the hood latches last is because if for some reason you can't undo any of these other bolts, you don't want to mess with the hood catch alignment before it's necessary. And the last two remaining attachment points are the plastic guides. Once you remove the top, just pinch and lift up with something like a small screwdriver. Now slide the hood latches underneath the Crosslink and lift it over the airbox tube, or if you prefer, you can remove it. We'll also transfer over the plastic guides to our new piece before installing it. Just twist it off like a lock and key mechanism and install it in the reverse order. For the airbox centering pin, we'll only need to transfer over the rubber portion, as this is what the carbon brace will rest on. Remembering that the corners of the hood latch rest on top of the Crosslink, we also want to install everything very loosely so we can test that it lines up with the hood. At this point, just push in the hood and ensure the release works. If it does, snug everything down, starting from the center, then drop test the hood. If it passes that test, then torque everything down in the same order. The T45s get 28 Newton meters, and all the T30s get 20 Newton meters except for the ones holding in the headlight brackets. Those ones are just snugged down hand tight. And like the T45s, the T40s also get 28 Newton meters. Lastly, place back on the weather stripping. If you want to keep this installation bare bones, just use the chapter section down below in order to skip forward to the carbon brace install, because next we're going to tackle the rear hood seal. Just remove the wire from the guide and pull off the old seal. The M seal is a little shorter than the one we just removed, and it installs in the exact same way, with the M print facing the back of the car. And since this one is shorter, you'll want to start at the center and work your way out. Then thread back in the wire. Honestly, this part should be really quick and easy, but might take a little bit longer than expected. If you decide to do the cowl panel, learn from my mistake and put the windshield wipers in service mode first by turning the car on, then off, followed by holding the toggle past the first stop for 5 seconds. With the windshield wipers in this position, remove the cover to reveal the 15mm nut and unscrew it, so you can apply some PB Blaster and allow it to soak as we loosen up the rest of the cowl. Firstly, by the 5mm Allens across the cowl that only need a 90-degree turn to disengage. Second are the lateral rivets, and with them out, we can pull the edge of the cowl out from the fender. At this point, you can use a small pry tool to lift up the windshield wiper arm, but you shouldn't need to exert much force at all. Also keep in mind your windshield in relation to your pry tool, that way you don't crack anything, which is why we also don't want to exert much force here as well. Now we can remove the cowl, clean the area to receive the new piece, and wipe off the PB blaster. Before tightening anything, we want to ensure the tabs on the lateral side are tucked underneath the windshield. With those in, we can insert our rivets and twist in our 5mm Allens. Just apply a little bit of downward pressure as you lock it in and ensure that it's secure. Place on the coverings and windshield wipers, remembering that they were in the service position before torquing the 15mm nut to 25 Nm, putting on the caps and lowering the wipers. Finally, we can bring in our carbon fiber brace for a test fit. If all the bolts fit, tighten it down. If you have a used brace that's been sitting for a while, like this one, you might see some flex as you tighten down the bolts, which get 28 Nm each, moving up from the center. Normally the shock tower coverings on the edge would go above the fender rail and secured by a rivet, but the 2 Series has a bit of a slimmer design, causing it to bunch. So we'll place it underneath and secure it by the remaining mounting points, which we can reuse our rivets from earlier. Time to bring in the lateral cowl pieces that are secured by their 10mm and a 90-degree turn, as well as a push rivet. Lastly, secure your electrical covering by its T20 screw and enjoy the genuine carbon fiber strut brace on your exclusive BMW.
And just like that, we have this carbon fiber strut brace retrofitted onto your BMW. And if you're wondering, the carbon fiber brace actually does make quite a bit of a difference in the handling of the car versus having in just the aluminum piece on the top or that old metal brace that we removed earlier. And although in this particular situation, we did use some used parts in order to complete this job, if you're somebody who wants brand new parts or just one single order to have everything in a single package, my friends over at Silicon Valley Bimmer have you covered. And I'm gonna leave the link for that down in the description below, as well as all the part numbers that you need for this particular retrofit. And if you have any additional questions, please leave it for me down in the comment section below. And I hope all of you have a safe and happy new year, and I'll see you in 2022.